and then they say, you're going to appear in person. They flip the script on everybody, right? So we can't support America by supporting Donald Trump because Donald Trump is not supporting America. Donald Trump is supporting United States corporation and the expansionism of statute, policy, and code running the whole world from a centralized authoritarian globalist regime. That's what the last 5 years of Slavid-19 was all about. Can we use statute, policy, and code and big corporations centralized to run the localized government of and by and for the people, not only all across America, but across the world? And they passed with flying colors. So that's the game. That's the theme. That's going to be the resolution, is understanding truly the difference between America and the corporation, right? Between Israel and a state of Israel, between Palestine and a state of, and all the rest of it, and what the state ofs always group up together to do to the land and the people, and what they interfere with, right? The greatest trick the devil ever did was convincing the world it doesn't exist. Government is a corporation. Corporation literally means speaker of the dead or the underworld. Corporation, dead speaker. In the words and terms are the understandings. If the corporation is the speaker of the dead and the underworld, then the whole world being run by statute, policy, and code and corporations is the kingdom of Shaitan, the kingdom of Satan, spoken about in scripture, or written about rather. So the only answer to this kingdom of Shaitan is coming back under God and living based on what our Holy Spirit reveals to us in conscience. There is no external solution that is actually going to be a resolution for the revolution. See, revolution means complete circle. That's how we got here. And we're about to have another American revolution and world war again, going in complete circles from where we came.
I'll be telling people history always repeats itself. And the only way to change it is by living by God and living how you think God wants you to live. If it's going to repeat itself. We are designed to live, die. That's what we designed to do. Live and die. It's just crazy. I thank you, and hopefully you can change somebody's mind. You know what I mean? Or like make somebody think. And just keep up the good work, okay?
Thank you, sir. What was your name again?
My name is Derek. My name is Derek.
Thank you, Derek. Yeah. I appreciate you. I'm going to let you go and see if there's any other callers who want to chime in.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, sir. All right. So there you have it. Lovely African-American here. Just like Donnie and all the rest. We love our African-Americans here. Remember when Donnie said my African-American? There's my African-American. There he is. He had ownership over him. Anthony, I got you here. I'm going to put you on hold for a second. KBHK
TV 44, San Francisco.
From the terrifying universe of the inner mind to the outer reaches of the imagination, we're waiting, poised at the edge of our seats. Time stops as we approach the unknown. Just when we think we're safe, the moment happens, and we...
Saturday night, time for Gas Theater. Join me, Tom Labrie, for the best in late-night fright.
Horror, suspense, mystery, science fiction, the supernatural. And now, sit back, relax if you can. You are about to enter the world of...
NPC the game.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? NPC the Game. Your host, Gabriel, coming at you live from District 13, the real Shaolin. In the back rooms of Taiwan, we're streaming. It's Sunday Fun Day. Breaking news. U.S. bombs Iran nuclear facilities, man. They're popping it off, man. Was it like 1984? They put that in our consciousness as children, war with the Persians and whatnot. But yeah, it is what it is, man. Masonic sorcery theater in full effect. But what does that have to do with your real life right now? Your personal life, your personal narrative. And but you're here with me. Shout out to the chat. Ahimsa Alexander. She left this message. She said, look, looks like an interesting topic. I actually like it a lot, enjoying studying differences in our planets with generational lessons. Yes, then these looking at this generational theory is something that some might say doesn't leave to chance or randomness as much as astrology, even though astrology is a science. It's looking at the generations, because the generations are a force. They are a force to be reckoned with, that is moving the human consciousness, eye of Thundera, down the needle of the space-time continuum we're living in right now. And shout out to the chat, Shadow Buddha in the building, my brother. Like and subscribe, donate. We enjoy them. What's going on, Wiccan? How you doing? How you doing, my friend? Shadow Buddha in the building, like I said, man. Welcome. Hey, what's this going on with the we put this schedule show 9 p.m. Eastern more than 24 hours ago, and I don't see anybody. I don't see Flow State. I don't see Orthodox Guy really do their scheduling, like put it out there, like when they're going to go live. But I mean, I would think that the small community we have, this meta network and all of the above sector, that you would see that that I'm streaming like right now. Like I've scheduled it for 9 o'clock. Yet you all never fails. You have to go live when when other people are going live, and I get it. You have schedules and whatnot, but bro, a little common courtesy, man. Little common courtesy. I guess you get be treated like you want to be treated, or whatever. But disappointing a little bit. But hey, man, look what you're dealing with. Some maybe it's one of the worst generations. Some of these folks. But Iran in the building. What's going on real quick with this? I just saw it right now. I thought we were going to wait 2 weeks, President Trump, before you do anything. I guess not. You couldn't wait. Huh? What's this breaking news, Sky News?
I've spoken to people in Iran in the last hour, including people who are in the know.
Who does this look like, you think?
It seems very clear to me, Yalda, that we are in the middle of a battle in Tehran, a political battle over the future of Iran. It's very clear. This battle was already ongoing in the past few days, and it's now been posed very clearly. Iran must choose. Does it want to start a protracted war with the United States? Does it want to potentially start a war that will implicate also the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, Saudi Arabia and others, by attacking them? Or does it ultimately of the attacks are predicting that this guarantees that Iran
he's almost more disturbing than the war.
10 years. So we have this sort of these kind of assessments and the long-term assessments. But I've spoken to people in Iran in the last hour, including people who are in the know or close to the positions of power.
What are we doing here?
It seems very clear to me, Yalda, that we are in the middle of a battle in Tehran, a political battle over the future of Iran. It's very clear. This battle was already ongoing in the past few days, and it's now been posed very clearly. Iran must choose. Does it want to start a protracted war with the United States? Does it want to potentially start a war?
Yeah. Yeah, what does it say? He said, Buddha said, you're the only one that schedules your lives ahead of time, and other creators happen to go live immediately at the time you schedule. Yeah, even when I'm late, a little late, a couple minutes late, they'll go live, like, right when I go live. But hey, Buddha and Wiccan NPC in chat, how's it going? What's up, Oracle? Yeah. Is this the last generation? No, it's not. It's not the last generation. Today's episode is the best generation. Who's the best generation? Transcendentals generation to generation beta. How each generation involved human consciousness. Yeah. How did that happen? How did that happen on our watch? So, yeah, let's time travel and take this full-blown ride. And let's break down normally you hear people break down the generations, Generation Z and millennials. We're going to talk about all of them, from the old school transcendental to the new kids on the block being born right now in 2025, Generation Beta, which is interesting because beta is the, in colloquial slang nowadays, that's like, the weak male, a beta male, right? Right now we're alpha, Generation Alpha, 2010, 2011 to 2024. Ben, what's up, Ben and friends? Ben being born in 2018 would be Generation Alpha, right? But here's the twist. We're not just talking about the fashion trends or the old school music. We're going to talk about how each generation helped evolve human consciousness and who we are today, the way we think and connect and dream, and even rebel, as we see right now with this Iran conflict. And all of this comes from these waves of human development that we're in the midst of. And don't worry, I got real life famous examples from each generation, so you can literally see what I mean. So, in the chat, tell me who your favorite generation is. If you know the generational theory and all that, what that is. Let me see that. Let me see this real quick. Generational theory explained. All caught up in the reverie. It's not far. Nobody. Oh, here we go. Real quick.
Book that was written by Neil Howe and William Strauss. William Strauss already passed away, so he's no longer able to speak on the topic, but Neil Howe is still around, and he talks a lot about this generational theory that they came up with and how it kind of like reveals patterns and cycles within different generations, so like millennials, boomers,
Yeah, like when did the vocal fry come to the generation? Are you a millennial?
The things you usually think of when you think of the word generation, and also like cycles of history. Essentially, Strauss and Howe came up with this analysis that they saw over the past like couple centuries of American history, at least since like late 1600s is kind of like the start of their analysis. They saw that essentially every 80 to 90 years, the world would go through a big shift. It's like every 20 to 25 years, there's almost like a new phase or turning. Then when you reach the end of those like 4 seasons of history.
Yeah, you can correspond this with the outer planets in astrology. Oh, they represent Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, the generational, the collective consciousness, as Jung would say, as we say, right? These shifts and epochs of time, a large amount of time, and you'll see generations more than just individuals in themselves probably have shaped and evolved the human consciousness more than any one person could have. It's the generations, right? And what is your generation? The people that were born relatively in your same era, around 10 years, was it like 10 to 19 years? And you share when you're born around the same time, you share moments in history or moments in great change that you can always reference. Like me, I'm technically the Generation X. What they call us the MTV generation, right? So a lot of people that were born, from I was born in 77, from like late 70s to or we'll say they do it, they move it back, so mid 60s to early 80s. You're kind of like the MTV generation, right? You grew up knowing about MTV. Generation X also, it's kind of like the in-between generation, before the internet and after the internet. Our teenagehood was thrust upon that.
The world kind of gets reshaped and you like start all over.
The turnings are important because they have very different societal.
What's going on, Yolanda? Good to see you, my friend. Great musical Transcendent stream you had. I was cleaning my chakras and purifying the aura, listening to that and just like relaxing. We need more of that. We appreciate you for that.
Economic and political
live stream
news, so that's why we're diving into this now. I feel like because it's such a tumultuous time.
Yeah, they called it like seasons, kind of thinking of it as like spring is like the first turning, so that's like when it's the high, like everything's great. It's basically right after a big crisis. So the whole world has come together to like create new institutions. There's more a community-based kind of feeling because they just went through this like really big struggle together. So it's all like in it for each other kind of thing, and things are thriving. Then you have the summertime when things are kind of like peaking. And because things are so good, then people are starting to be like, wait, why do I care about the collective? I want to like find myself. So it's about like individualism then. And so then things like start kind of being questioned. There's like more kind of cultural upheaval during that time. So you can kind of think of like the hippies and like the free love
baby boomer generation
kind of time when they're trying to break free from institutions. Then when it comes to fall is the unraveling. So that's the third turning. And that's when like shit starts hitting the fan and like things are crumbling more.
Like now, maybe?
And eventually that leads to the winter, which is the fourth turning, which is crisis. And what is fascinating to me, why I was like, I'm interested in this topic, is
maybe that's now the crisis in motion.
Like, we are in the fourth turning, like we're in the crisis time period.
You think so, Chad? Do you think we're in the crisis time with this generational stuff? What do you think?
To read too much into Iranian state television, because they will also be sort of trying to sort of gather themselves and work out what is going on for themselves. But Iranian state
you think we're there right now? I don't know. Yeah, so the generational epochs of time, they shaped human consciousness more than any individual alone could do it, right? Even infamous people like the Austrian painter Hitler, or great people like President Kennedy or Martin Luther King, these people did stuff to change the course of history in a lot of ways. However, it's the generations that move mountains, right? Fire on the mountain. What's going on, Leopard? Congratulations on your successes. So let's go. The generational breakdown and nuances of this human consciousness. Let's make it fun. It doesn't have to be all uptight and whatnot. And the first thing I came up with when I was researching was the Transcendental generation, which was born. What's up, Sam? How's it going, my friend? Good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah. Oh yeah, sir. Yeah. The great Milan has a comment. She said, we definitely need one another to support the energy of our auras, especially because of what the U.S. just did. Yeah. It's coming to fruition. These neocons, what they wanted, their little war of Armageddon. But what they don't know is that there's a personal apocalypse that goes on every day with people being born and people, quote unquote, dying, transitioning, their own personal apocalypse, their own personal singularity that they meet, right? Their own personal judgment. But as a collective, let's keep it moving, right? Let's keep it moving. So this transcendental generation, which was from 1790 to 1820, right? And think early America industrial era, and not even in England, right? On the other side of the pond, the Industrial Revolution was just kicking in. However, people like Emerson's, the great thinkers and writers and poets and philosophers, and were writing about going into the woods and finding meaning. And some of the personality traits from this transcendental generation, we can say, of the human collective consciousness is going on now, is philosophy. What else? Radical rebellion towards the old systems of doing things, right? And in this term, agriculture, right? With the Industrial Revolution and the factories and everything that brought with that. These are all layers setting the groundwork of more and more systems that the human consciousness is using, stacked on top of each other. What these generations represent. I see it, huh? You see it too, hopefully. So what's going on, Markella and chatters? How's everyone doing? Thorell, let's see. As a collective, I've been trying to increase the panel versus apocalypse to a singularity, past the trauma state. Right, I see you doing that. You didn't even on OTW. To me, that council he has, you're pretty much the only person that actually lives it. What they speak about, the words, putting action to transformation and doing real good in our community, right? In our metaverse. Yeah, I see it. Yeah, Emerson is quoted as one of my favorites. To be great is to be misunderstood. Right. Sounds like a Aquarius chamber. Right. To be great is to be misunderstood, because you're great when you're a trendsetter, when you're thinking outside the box. The collective that's part of the mass hallucination we call the consensus reality cannot see it because they're in the midst of it like a fish in the water. But thus, the mavericks of consciousness, the trailblazers, the Prometheus chamber folks, they see what lies ahead, and oftentimes they're either ignored, or if they do have attention put to them, they're talked down to and roasted and because of their avant-garde new ideas that end up being mainstream after a while. It's just that they're ahead of their time. Yeah. Shadow Buddha in the building was a communist NPC. Were you asked to be on the OTW council? No, I was not. I mean, we have our own council. We've announced that last year during the Panelverse Awards. We had the NPC the Game Panelverse Awards Council. So I don't know, maybe he got that idea from that. Hopefully he can do good whatever he's doing. I appreciate that you recognize that. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to see. Anybody with half a brain. But I appreciate you and your work. And everyone, donations are welcome.
Why don't you just take my blood?
Yeah, and it is Sunday. And it is Sunday. So, yeah, we're programmed with that church donation chamber. What's up, Chris Lestrange? Are you sending me a message on Discord? Or we're friends now? Okay, good. Shout out to Chris Lestrange. So much fun over there with him and Brick yesterday on his channel. Super fun. Like Marathon Kev is, I have a lot of fun over there too. But yeah, Chris is dope, man. Shout out to the Brick. Yeah. And who we got here? Thank you, Markella, for that. Aheem Alexander said, "My favorite generation is my own, Generation X. I like Generation Z too. They are similar. Yeah, there's something like Dennis and I were talking about this yesterday in the Discord, Hyperspace Discord, and there was like, if I feel like that they pushed, and Zephyr too. Shout out to the Zephyr. I feel like the social engineers, they pushed back Generation Z to 1965. I don't always remember it being that early, which puts it to about 1980, 1982. I like it. I like it when it corresponds with the Pluto and Libra generation to 84. Libra relationships versus being codependent. Those are the issues, the situations a lot of us Generation X folks have been experiencing our adult life, maybe even childhood. This pull between being dependent and independent and codependent, healthy partnerships. A lot of us are serial monogamous, right? Jumping from one relation to another, when in fact, under the Scorpio and Libra chamber, when you find your life partner, you stick it out through the good and the bad instead of leaving when things aren't going too good. When you stick it out, if you're able to stick it out, sometimes your relationship becomes what I call all chemical relationship, where true change occurs through all the strife and discord, as well as the joy and the beauty too. Yeah, but yeah, let's get after it here. Let's keep going with this. All right. So the Transcendental generation was cool in 1790 and 1820 because this is when you get the folks, the deep thinkers of, like, the self-help era, right? Napoleon Hill and them and type of shit, like thinking where he probably got inspired by, where if you manifest, you can manifest it if your will is strong and whatnot. So I think the contribution of consciousness of these radicals that were trying to rebel against the old system was that they were people who started asking the question, what is the meaning of life outside of work and war, right? Because before that, most people were fixated and had no choice but to think about work, like Rihanna, right? And then war, more war. So what's life mean? What is the meaning of life outside those things? And a famous example is, like I said, me and Sam see it. Ralph Waldo Emerson. He literally helped start the Transcendental movement. No Emerson, no self-help books today, right? He wouldn't have that. Yeah, transcendental meditation, transcending, going beyond the normal. Shadow Buddha was a comment at MPC. It seems that the current generation also doesn't want children. Anecdotally, I see about 75% of women between 20s and their 30s, they don't want kids anymore. Your thoughts? They don't. They will use the idea of not of not having enough money to take care of those kids and whatnot. But I think a lot of it too is then you'll hear people say, if it's not that, excuse. They say they want to be free to live their own life and do what they want. I've even had students write about this in junior high and as well as high school, senior high school, and they say the same thing that these young adults say about having kids. They don't want them. Yeah, they don't want children, and I can understand that, but dude, we got to have some elders talking to them about like how it could actually change your life from the beginning, from the better. So this is what they're saying in China, but I hear it in Taiwan as well. It's not just Buddha. It's not just China and Taiwan. It's all over the world. Check this out. Let me know, Chad. Have you experienced hear people talk like
been overdue for quite a long?
我家以后没有人呐，我就是我。
There will be no one left in my family. I'm the last generation of my family. There will never be another poor person in my family again. Because I live a carefree life, I have no mortgage or car loan to pay off. I don't have a wife or children to support. As long as I'm full, my family isn't hungry. The man smiles widely as he talks about his current lifestyle. No marriage, no children, no house, no car.
Okay, no responsibility. I get it. No. There is a lot of on those material thing. There is a pull and attachment to it that I can see how it feels light not to have it. But however, some of us want to have a family and experience consciousness through those modality. Look at all these people. Do they want kids, you think?
In recent years, more and more young people in China are adopting this four-nose lifestyle. Do you want to have children in the future?
没有，不要，我能把它生出来。
No, I don't. I could give birth to one, but I don't think I have the ability to raise them well.
现在年轻人生孩子的话是。
How many children do you think is best for young people to have now?
I think not having children is the best because the pressure to have children is too great.
He's dressed like a woman. I mean, what is this? An old like traditional Chinese anime costume or something? He said, I think not having children is best because the pressure to have children is too great. Yeah, they probably are pressured to have children by their parents. And I think it's always been like that in these more older, a lot of things are older than the United States culture, American culture. So yeah, I guess they can't take the pressure anymore, or the pressure of their parents wanting them to have kids.
If you could have children, how many would be best?
No children, none.
Even an old lady said no children, right?
How many children is ideal?
0. The young
I mean, we don't know if he's actually saying that though.
People interviewed by this vlogger all express a firm lack of desire to have children. Even among couples, both partners stated they were
She walked away. Maybe she's embarrassed to be on camera or whatever, but these are a couple. They don't want to have children.
Willing to have kids. Why are more and more young people choosing not to have children? Is this generation becoming more selfish, lazy, and irresponsible? Or are they becoming more awakened?
没钱，真的是没钱。有钱的话是。
What do you think, Chad? Do you think they're becoming more responsible, or are they becoming more awakened with that? Huh? Or not wanting to have children? Under the Terrence McKenna Act, he would say first world families and intellectual people would want not to have as less children as possible, so you can be tread lightly on the earth, right? That's what he says. And then you go to Africa, my father's homeland, and you see people having children that are below the poverty level. Some might say, like, because they don't know about birth control, but well, how do you know? They might know about it. They still want those children. Either it helps takes the burden off their workload, or they just want to procreate. I mean, but for some reason, in the Western mindset, even in Asia, they don't want to have children either. A lot of them.
No money, really no money. If I had money, who wouldn't want to have children? Actually, if my child were to born just to inherit my poverty and my suffering, I think not having a child is a kind of kindness to them.
She said, actually, if my child were to be born just to inherit my poverty and suffering, I think not having a child is kind of kindness. No, not if you're a sentient being that wants to be born and experience this earth. If that was the case, we wouldn't have people like Oprah Winfrey, baby boomer, like being born from nothing and poverty, right? Um, Inheriting poverty only to become one of the most richest, successful, and some think the most satanic person in the world. But that's another live stream. But yeah, like I'm not buying that excuse. I mean that you're entitled, miss, to your own reasoning for saying that, but no. If that's the case, the majority of people on Earth wouldn't be born. If you want to say it's kindness, I mean, have at it. And by the way, this is the China Observer channel, which I think is a product of Falun Gong organization. And they have really good news about China, even though it may be biased against it. Yeah. So society has changed. Not surprised they don't want kids. Too egocentric, can't take responsibility. I think that's what it is too. They want to say it's money and all that shit. But if there's a will, there's a way. If you want to have children, just look at these people, these generations we're about to go speed run through. Great point, Sam. Excellent point. I like your style, sis. I like your style. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We'll get back on this. The Transcendental. So I like Walt Whitman for the Transcendental movement for sure. Facts. Damn, I gotta do another one. No, we'll do this for you. I like that one. Walt Whitman's a G. Yeah. Walt Whitman is a definite G. Yeah. Buddha. Yeah. Leaves of the Grass. Yeah. High powered knowledge right there. Fuck yeah. NPC also Buddha says also I have seen manual Christian women still want kids, but anecdotally that's a very strict of only dating Christian men regardless if they're another religion, AI, Buddhist, Hindu, etc. Yeah, man, they know what they want, right? They want children. They realize as a woman or even as a man, part of this experience of being human in general is having children, and not only having them but raising them to be the stewards of this world, right? And in the universe, the traveler of the universe, right? But they've been programmed. They only want Christian men. But the higher you get in most of these religions, you see from a bird's eye view, the eagle perspective, that the Christian epitome of what it means to be a Christian and a Buddhist and a Muslim, it's kind of wrapped up in the same thing: love and compassion, and as well as the importance of valuing your consciousness, right? Right. So, but if the woman can't see that, she's so trapped in this list of what she wants. There is a good Buddhist there for her that loves her and wants to have a child with her. They're missing out, man. They're missing out. Yeah, you be careful what you wish for, but you can get it in interesting packages that you would never expect. But you still get what you wish for and then some. Children, Miss Alexander says children have been flipped to the top of society versus bottom. So it's more of a luxury experience versus holding on to traditional bloodline continuum at the moment. Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. The children are the ones that are lifted to the highest level of the family, extended family and nuclear family. It's all about the kids, right? Right. Rather than the bloodline. I think because the modern human, the postmodern human, is looking more at the immediate experience rather than how in ancient times they were looking more at generational as well as larger epochs of time. Right. Yeah, you like mine too, or whoever's. Yeah. So, your favorite transcendental, Sam, person? So the second generation that we're moving along with is the Gilded generation, which was 1820 to 1840. And these folks, some of the characteristics that come to mind are they're big on money and power and expansion. Think about the robber barons, right? The steel factories, right? And some of the traits of this collective consciousness were, at least the one of the people that stood out, were they were ambitious and also materialistic and obsessed with their legacy. And some of the contributing resources that they gave to the human consciousness was they laid down the material systems that interestingly enough, we later will rebel against, on this journey. And then probably the most famous example is John D. Rockefeller, the original blueprint of a billionaire. Yeah. And then we get to the progressive generation from 1840 to 1860. And these were the reformers, right? The civil rights mavericks and women's rights and labor rights, right? And the traits were definitely peppered with being idealistic and reform driven, justice focused. And the contributing factors to the human consciousness experience would probably moved us into more moral awareness in situations, right? More moral awareness. Examples would be Susan B. Anthony pushing women's right to vote, right? And Frederick Douglass around this time too was doing his thing. Yeah. And then I'm telling you guys, you can't get this on the normal videos. I couldn't even find any videos about talking about anything before the greatest generation, the World War II generation. So when I was reading about the Transcendental generation, I was like, yeah, that's my people, because some of y'all might be a Generation X or a Boomer or a Gen Alpha or a Millennial, but you may feel like you're actually disguised in disguise, and you should be in another generation. So if you feel like you should be in another generation, or you feel more you resonate with one of the ones we're mentioning, put it down. Let me know if any of these generations resonate with you, right? So the next one on the fourth tier generation on this human consciousness journey, collective consciousness, is the missionary generation, right? Missionary sex, missionary in terms of religious movements. So from 1860 to 1882, right, the missionary generation. And these people were more moral and strict and believed in doing things properly, right? And some of the contributions that they gave to the collective consciousness was, and is continually, they're still doing it, they gave rise to the modern education institutions, right? The Prussian system of education, right? Rather than the schoolhouse, more liberal studies, trivium based, one schoolhouse education, we went to the Prussian system of in a way, teaching people to be more specialized in what they know and their knowledge, so they can be a cog in the wheel, maybe at worst, right? So, in low key, this missionary generation brought us bureaucracy in the systems we see in government and organizations. I think the best example is Theodore Roosevelt, the Rough Rider, and during his reign, they built the Panama Canal. Which is a staple on that on what life is in the Western Hemisphere. And then you come to the lost generation, right? And that was the 1883 to 1900. This is the post World War One generations, where the mantra on people's mind, the question was, what even is life? These are the what even is life people, right? You ever ask that question? That's some deep existential right? That's why they call them the lost generation. What even is life? Some very scorpionic depth psychology right there. And some of the traits that distinguish them were disillusionment, and as well, we got a lot of great artistic works and artists from this era, and because they were searching for meaning, because they're lost, right? And some of their contribution to the collective consciousness was that they brought emotional honesty into their writing and their art, and into culture, right? Because Benjamin and Friends, this is a broadcast in the show about culture, and the example that a lot of us Americans champion is Ernest Hemingway, who was tough on the outside, but definitely broken on the inside. He lets off classic lost generation energy. Classic lost generation energy. So that brings us up to speed with some of these generations that we'll look at in a little bit more detail right here with what they're doing in this fun way. Let's get after it.
Talks. When I was your age, we were working in the mines. Grandpa grumbles between mouthfuls of mashed potatoes. Okay, boomer. Your 12-year-old cousin fires back, eyes glued to his iPhone. Skippity toilet. And there you are, frantically scrolling through job listings, trying to find a side hustle to cover, well, living. But how did we get here? Why does it feel like the generations are at war? It wasn't always like this. Sure, back in the 80s.
We didn't even have generational theory all the time. They shouldn't be at war. They're working together. They're layered on top of each other, like a great collage.
1800s, they probably complained about how those darn 1812ers were ruining the Revolutionary Wars generation's hard-fought legacy. But this idea of labeling people by generations and turning it into a culture clash, that's actually a 20th century invention. Generations used to be simple family labels until someone decided, hey, let's study this and fight about it. And now we have 7 distinct generations, each thinking they're doing things right. But why does this feel like a battleground for who's really to
We're in the middle, Generation X.
blame?
There's a new theory that I stumbled upon about Generation X. So it's a sub-generation of Generation X.
For the world's problems. That's exactly what we're breaking down in this episode of The Infographic Show. Every generation explained. Find out exactly.
Not every. I'm explaining every generation, folks. Wicked said the Transcendental movement emphasizes the divinity of our nature and the interconnectedness of all things. Yep. Sup? What's that mean? Like, what's up? Hey, anyway, what's up, man? Good to see you. Good to see you, man.
Where you fit into this generational showdown. The greatest generation, 1901 to 1927. This generation was born at the start of a new century filled with promise, progress, and excitement. But naturally, history had different plans. The early years of this generation would be filled with massive upheaval, with many seeing World War I unfold and being haunted by the specter of the Spanish flu. But amid this, they saw many leaps in culture as the
Roaring 20s, jazz and swing. You know, they're partying back there, man. What's his name? Great Gatsby, right? Babylon, that movie that came out about early Hollywood.
Roaring 20s took off and brought jazz and swing music to the mainstream. But with every up comes a down, and the Great Depression hit, as many of them were approaching adulthood, plunging the entire world into economic uncertainty. And then the rumblings of war started. And that's how
there's the Austrian painter we talk about.
This generation earned their name. Most of this generation were fighting age when World War II broke out, and they became associated with the most iconic military triumph the United States had ever seen. Although there were many losses, they returned home to celebrations and went on to great success in business, culture, and of course, politics. It's believed there are over 100,000 members of this generation still alive.
100,000. You guys have any interaction with them, right? From the Greatest Generation? And I'm pretty sure that what's his name came up with that. Tom Brokaw came up with that word. They used to be called the GI, General Infantry Generation, but that didn't really stick. So they called them the Greatest Generation because of all the all the wars and depression they lived through. And so that was between the Greatest Generation was coming off the heels of the Lost Generation, and where the Lost Generation, which I think I might be a part of that one, that was their mantra was what even is life? Asking questions like that. What's up, Wheels? It's all good. You're here when you're here, right? Yeah, it's all good. The party starts when you come, right? Under the Leo Act. So, yeah, the Greatest Generation. That's from about 1901 to 1927, and this is where we got our World War I heroes, and they built America, literally, right? And some of the traits that they gave to this human consciousness collective experience were duty and sacrifice and hard work, right? The golden age, right? Being stoicism. And some of the contributions that they gave the collective consciousness experience is, and because we're currently living it right now, is they built the systems we're still arguing about today, because most of these people their attitudes fueled the boomers, right? Their programming. And for example, John F. Kennedy was part of the Greatest Generation. He was born in 1917. He was a war vet, and he was the president. And some say one of the greatest presidents of all time, right?
So if you're lucky enough to know one, ask them to tell you a crazy story.
Oh, my friends died so you can play Fortnite. Yeah, living it out, man. That shit's wild. Yeah, man. My grandpa, shout out to him. I think he was born in 1960. Was it 1916 or something crazy like that, 1916. And he used to tell me stories when he was on an aircraft carrier in the Pacific during World War II, and he couldn't even swim and he was in the Navy. How about that? Yeah. He told me that some of the German prisoners of war they captured, that they used to go down to the brig and make fun of them and shit and roast them.
Story about the good old days.
That's
with a legacy.
My grandfather, my beloved Adolf. That's his name. What a great name. Yeah.
Marge, there is no surprise the next generation.
But it's really interesting enough. He went by his Christian name more than anything, William.
Was sort of overshadowed. Silent Generation, 1928 to 1945. The Silent Generation was also shaped by these world events, but not in the same way, as they grew up in a world in flux. The Depression shaped their childhood, leading to many growing up in unsettled circumstances, and the war caused wartime rationing. Many saw parents die.
My nanny, my grandmother's generation. My grandmother, the Gemini, June 4th, same as Angelina Jolie, born in 1930.
In combat, and grew up in a deeply patriotic environment. Speaking out against the government was frowned upon, and a strong sense of collectivism.
Maybe this is why my nanny would say, like, children are to be seen, not heard. Do as I say, but not as I do, she would say.
Was encouraged, and that's how this generation got its name. because as soon as one war ended, another began. This was the first generation
German thing,
largely
huh,
defined by the Cold War. The threat of communism was already alive and well in America before this generation was born. But once the Soviet Union got nukes, it was all hands on deck. The name comes from the fact that most of them were silent during the McCarthy era, keeping their heads down and maintaining a strong work ethic that had been instilled in them since childhood. That kind of low-key behavior leads to them often being forgotten as a key generation. Baby boomers, 1940.
Yeah, so these the silent generation, huh? Yeah, they were very silent. So 1928 to 1945, they definitely were quiet and disciplined, because quiet action breeds a space for discipline where you can focus on things. And but oftentimes you get overlooked under the Capricorn lit, being slow and steady, right? And some of the traits that they gave to us, to our collective experience, were this mantra of "don't rock the boat," but they low key changed everything behind the scenes, right? Those people that don't talk much are the ones that a lot of times that are engineering the metaphysics of the reality that we're experiencing, and some of the things that have contributed to the human collective consciousness as it evolved was they raised the baby boomers, and maybe they were silent because they were making babies, making the baby boomers, right? They shaped early media with their newspapers, the Hearst and the George Hearst, and radio, and they brought about TV, right? An example of this is one of our great Americans, humans, Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah, the silent generation gave us civil rights and leadership. Yeah, Malcolm X. Shout out to Malcolm. Well, actually, I think Malcolm was a little older than Martin Luther King. To keep it 100, yeah. Will says World War II could have been avoided. A soldier in World War I had a young Hitler in his crosshair, and he let him go. Okay, yeah, but yeah. But with great upheaval brings great change. Leopard and I were talking about that earlier, like how a lot of these issues that happen in the Panelverse, for example, they do bring about their catalyst for change if you have the right mindset, if you want to get better from them, right? But the point is, we don't want them all the time. We don't want to be fighting all the time. What would the world have been if we never went to World War II? There's an interesting concept too, like what would the world been if the Axis would have won? I think I might have to go in there. What do you think? You think I should go over that? What if the Axis would have won the war? What would the world look like? Maybe. So here we come to the baby boomers, right? And the baby boomers, they come in at 1946 to 1964. These are the Leo. What is it? Leo and Pluto generation, right? And these are the rock stars, right? So that some of the traits that the baby boomers have are they're optimistic for sure, rebellious. They're rebelling against their parents' generation, the silent generation, and they become the establishment they once hated. They were the hippies that wanted rebellion and change under the Aquarius Act, living in communes, and they went to the Authoritarian Act, the opposite of an Aquarius, the Leo, the dictator. This is why, like, I think we have 3 or 4 presidents that come from this era, right? They're super old and dated at this point, right? They're thinking, and what they contributed was they created to the consciousness of evolution is they created the modern consumer world, And they even invented the concept of teenager under the Marketing Act, right? That's wild. Aheems Alexander says, "Hey, Wheels, think someone else would have stepped in the shoes." Yeah, Goebbels was actually smarter and more erroneous. Mussolini was still going to rise for the Italians. Ezra Pound wrote about that. Ezra Pound, another one. Yeah. I mean, Hitler played his role, right? That's very true. Things would have been different. That's what actually happened, and then what actually happened. Yeah. So the baby boomers, man, they contributed to creating the modern consumer world that we're living in. And like I said earlier, an example of that is Oprah Winfrey, who went from poverty to media queen. That's boomer consciousness expanding right there. That's what it is right there.
Low-key behavior leads to them often being forgotten as a key generation. Baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. The term baby boomers comes from the baby boom of the late 1940s and 1950s, as all the World War II veterans returned home and the economy recovered from the Depression and wartime footing. The result? A higher standard of living for Americans, a fast advance in commerce and technology, and a whole lot of woohoo. And soon the babies started coming, resulting in a massive generation of over 76 million Americans alone, making them the largest generation. And they grew up in a world that saw progress come fast. This was the age of the space race, of the civil rights movement, of Woodstock, and of changes that led to what most people view as a typical American childhood. But it was also an age of uncertainty and terror. If the words duck and cover cause you to dive under the nearest table, you might just be a baby boomer. This was the era when nuclear annihilation was the clearest and most present threat, as events like the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the brink. Thus,
which is interesting because by the time I got to be in elementary school, we had to duck and cover under our desks and hear air raid sounds. Movies like The Day After Tomorrow, Day After Tomorrow was talked about. Nuclear holocaust in the U.S. were popular, scaring us and programming us during this Cold War with the Soviet Union and Iran. And look what we have now in 2025, June 22nd, 21st, summer solstice, they popped this shit up. You don't think these people aren't looking at the stars and using astrology to plan their moves in their Masonic sorcery theater? But yeah, this is a program that the social engineers are really trying to milk, right? Maybe I love. Yeah, you do love studying history, huh? You and me both. You too, Willis. Yeah.
Baby boomers were raised to be cautious and deeply patriotic, but this was also the era of the Vietnam draft and the massive anti-war movement that followed, something that continues in how they impact politics to this day. They've had 4 presidents: Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, and Trump.
Damn, that's a lot of baby boomers, man. Yeah. So you would think that the next Generation X is going to have at least 3 or 4.
They have a reputation for leaning conservative. And
that means that, that means that Biden was from the silent generation. Holy shit. When you look at it like that, that's wild, man. So Joe Biden was part of the silent generation, huh? Yeah, they just say, like, make jokes he's old and meme him like that, right? But that says a lot. So he was born in 1942, November 20th. Right? Wow. On the cusp of Sag and Scorpio. He's very silent. He was silent. You remember those? Yeah, super creepy. Super. Yeah, they have to do that still too. Yeah, they have a thing and here in Taiwan. They have an earthquake pillow that Ben has to take to school. Yeah, because we literally have air raid shelters and bomb shelters on almost every block, right? To this day, planes fly over my head when I'm teaching all the time. F-16s.
And their easier road in the economy and employment rankles the younger generations. but they're as ideologically diverse as the other generations, and as the era of if the words duck and cover cause you to doubt the clearest and most. This was also the era of the Vietnam draft and the massive anti-war movement that followed, something that continues in how they impact politics to this day. They've had 4 presidents: Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, and Trump. They have a reputation for leaning conservative, and their easier road in the economy and employment rankles the younger generations. But they're as ideologically diverse as the other generations, and as they reach retirement age by the millions each year, they show no signs of their influence waning. With the boomers casting such a long shadow, is it any surprise the next generation...
That shall give my vibe of midlife crisis. Boomer, yeah. Their mantra of creating the modern consumer, world consumer, huh?
Is a little more zen. Generation X, 19...
Here we go, Generation X. Am I wrong? Is this like Mandela effect? Was Generation X like start in 1967 or something like that before? I don't know. I do know.
65 to 1980, known as the slacker generation by many of the older generations.
Slacker generation, huh?
Generation X largely escaped one major trial by fire, a major war that swept them up. While the baby boomers largely fought in Vietnam, this generation saw the latter days of the Cold War as tensions started to slowly ease. The most
we don't care about that shit.
Significant war of this period, the Gulf War, was a limited conflict that didn't involve a draft.
We're in 6th grade when that happened.
And that led to them becoming far more involved in domestic affairs and far more willing to question the powers that be. This was the era where LGBT rights became a key issue, and when the AIDS epidemic swept the world. And
remember, we saw, even though we went to Catholic school, they took us to see the AIDS quilt when it came to the San Jose Convention Center. Massive.
While the world might not have been in as much danger of immediate annihilation, change was going to come fast, and much of that cultural shift would be on the TV. Today, Generation X is the most associated with not what they did.
We used to be like, Mom, I don't want to go to bed. Let me watch another commercial. This is why this broadcast, NPC the Game Live, it starts with the intro. It has segments, and it ends with an outro credits. This is the programming of the MTV generation of yours truly.
But with what they watched and listened to, this is the era that MTV came on the air, and the beginnings of the grunge movement stepped into the stage. It also saw a disturbing rise in kidnappings and the rise of the satanic panic, as fear shifted to the home front, and parents became more protective of their...
You've heard that term before, Oracle chat? Satanic panic?
Their kids, spelling an end to the age of free-range childhood.
Oh yeah, look at that pedo van right there. She got the bat. She's like, how dare you? How dare you look at my kids? Oogle them, right? Adam Walsh, right? He was kidnapped and decapitated by a predator, right? This was spurred America's Most Wanted, John Walsh. To this day, he's putting out content with his other son.
And the beginning of helicopter parenting. Much like the silent generation, this generation is often seen as overshadowed by the one sandwiching it.
You need to remember this, even if no one remembers you. Right. I always got this forbidding thing. Like, I hear about the Vietnam War. I hear about the Great Depression and the Greatest Generation. What about my generation, Generation X? What was it? For a minute there, we thought it was Occupy Wall Street or SF, where we're from. But I was like, once I got there, it's just a bunch of stupid kids doing heroin, shooting heroin. They don't know what the fuck they want. So what was the next? The loose change movement, 9/11, Tea Party, and all that stuff. What is it? What's it going to be? Huh?
And it has never had a president, even as its older members approach 60. Now
we've never had a president, right? Who was the closest we got to that? I think Obama was one of the youngest person that ran for president. So I'm trying to think. I don't think nobody close.
It's time to shift to the kids.
Shift to the kids. All right. Before we do that, but met a few Satan like Gen X Jeff, for example. Yeah. I mean, I talked to one Zach Hubbard who was in charge of one of the biggest organizations of Satanism in America. We actually have some good points about consciousness and whatnot. Let's see. So this next video we're gonna review. It's from a channel called Xennial Philosopher, and he has this interesting take on the generations as well. And in particular, he's a Gen Xer technically, but he has this new category he made. So let me know what you think about it. Here's his channel right here. Let's see what he has to say. We'll start from what he has to say about the Generation X. Oh, boomers. But before we do that, just to recap the Generation X, 1965 to 1980, and some of the traits that they're known for as being we're known for being skeptical and rebellious and DIY, do it yourself, right? And some of the contribution that they gave to giving human consciousness as it evolves is hip hop music, pump music, startup culture, and our mantra: don't trust the system, make your own, right? Kurt Cobain is definitely an example of one of our legends, Generation Xers. The grunge and the pain and the genius that he had speared a lot of mumble rappers today who are popular, like Lil Uzi Vert and XXX Extension, rest in peace, and Juice World, rest in peace too. This in peace. Also, Elon Musk. We don't claim him, but yeah, he's part of Generation X. He definitely has that wild Generation X energy, right? Yeah, so let's check out the baby boomers, and we'll go into this new category, sub generation from the philosopher, right? But in the meantime, while we do that, while we switch it up a little bit, don't forget the dono. The donations are greatly accepted, right?
Why don't you just take my blood?
Yeah, I'll take money instead. Let's see. Yeah, so this is the channel right here. So we'll go into the silent generation, into the boomers.
Brought the world jazz, early rock and roll music, and the beatniks.
Yeah, I had that Elvis. What did we say? I had Elvis in the thumbnail. He's not a, what did I say, a boomer. He's actually from the silent generation. That's him and his 14-year-old bride. Yes, Elvis had a thing for 14-year-old women, young women. Yeah. So there's me in the middle with Miss NPC when we got married in Monterey, California. Shout out to the fucking Xers, man. Unknown hood, right? And then we got the millennials to the right. Right. I got my Vans on. I'm a Masonic stance right there. Looking like a Jeep unit. All right.
Existential trailblazers for the hippies to come. The children of the silent generation were the largest contingent ever at the time in the US, the baby boomers. The baby boomers, who are often referred to today as simply boomers, are the generation that brought hippies to the world. The baby boomers are the parents of Gen X and Xennial generations, but as you can surmise, parents of Gen X and to the world. I
like that picture. Well, my mom, she's 59, 1959, so she's part of that. Year the pig. I remember she took my grandpa went to San Francisco with her when she was little. She said he paid a hippie $1 to take a picture with her. Yeah, what's his? I mean, her sister was a hippie though, right? My aunt Claudia. So Alexander said, seems kind of PDF reading Priscilla's book. Creepy, dude. Yeah, there's actually like because we live in close to Australia, we get a lot of 60-minute Australia in our algorithm here, and they just did a show last week about all Elvis's obsession with 14-year-old girls and how they would spend the night, for example, at Graceland, and their mothers would call for them to hurry up, get ready for school the next morning. Right? Interesting stuff. But yeah, here we go.
The baby boomers are the parents of Gen X and Xennial generations, but as you can surmise, based on the overall numbers, more baby boomers stayed single and didn't make any kids to become the next generation. Baby boomers are credited with creating modern corporate America. They are by far the most commonly represented within the US government, despite age and health issues, and despite them being far beyond any reasonable retirement age. Generally, boomers are seen by other generations as greedy and selfish, since they reportedly retain well over half.
Damn, he said greedy and selfish. What do you think, chat? You think the boomers in general can be greedy and selfish? Definitely when you look at the politicians.
Of America's overall wealth and don't seem inclined to let it go anytime soon. In fact, according to the Federal Reserve, 55.8 million Americans over the age of 65, about 17% of the population, control over $96 trillion, nearly half of the wealth in the US.
Damn.
While the baby boomers were busy taking LSD.
LSD right there. Illuminati style. Blotter acid.
And generating wealth, they were also busy creating the next.
No, it's weird that, like, I always thought about that, how the 1960s set the stage so we can surf the apocalypse. And psychedelics and MK Ultra, they laid the groundwork of the music that programmed these future engineers who were hippies at the time into thinking outside the box and seeing how the computer is an outward expression of the human brain, right? Steve Jobs, who wasn't necessarily a computer guy, engineering computer guy, but he was in the sense of how to package the computer, and he knew how aesthetics are important for his generation and in the coming generations as well. Yeah, so Steve Jobs, the Aquarian, but yeah, the baby boomers, who were the hippies who rebelled against the silent generation, their parents, and the generations before, the greatest generation, they ended up being disillusioned with the rebellion and ended up assimilating in the system and being a lot of ways what they didn't want, what they rebelled against. Right.
Next generation, Generation X. Being the baby boomer generation's children didn't do much to make this generation particularly large.
That's hard. That's when we grew up, huh? Oracle. And Heems Alexander says, greed is good. Gordon Gecko. Boomer movie for sure, right? With my hair slicked back.
Large. They did get a reputation for being a lazy or slacker generation. Gen X is often referred to as the MTV generation.
Atari 2600 with the wood grain. That's what, like, during those air raid drills and that type of consciousness going on. This is when I was playing this, and I was like, if there is a nuclear war, one good thing is it won't be school. And I thought my young mind, that it won't be school, so I can play my Atari all day. I love my power.
Gen X is often referred to as the MTV generation, and they brought things like hip hop,
Hip hop changed my life. Thank you, Chemo, my friend, the DJ.
Hard rock, 80s fashion, skateboarding, and more to the world. In 1990, Time magazine published an article about Gen X called Living, Proceeding with Caution, in which
the 20-something generation is balking at work, marriage, and baby boomer values. Why are today's young adults so skeptical? This is boomer generation warfare, one of the silent wars that Alex Jones has been talking about. This it's an info war. This is like this is generational gangbanging right here.
The author said
propaganda.
They have trouble making decisions. They would rather hike in the Himalayas than climb a corporate ladder. They have few heroes, no anthems, and no style to call their own. Going on to say they possess only a hazy sense of their own identity, but a monumental preoccupation with the problems the preceding generation will leave for them to fix.
Okay.
I think it's important to point out that
here we go.
That this kind of thing is almost always said about whatever generation is coming to adulthood by their elders. About to point out, but a monumental preoccupation.
They possess only a hazy sense of their own identity, but a monumental preoccupation with all of the problems that the preceding generations will leave for them to fix.
Occupation with the problems the preceding generation will leave for them to fix. I think it's important to point out that this kind of thing is almost always said about whatever generation is coming to adulthood by their elders. As Gen X was busy inventing skateboarding and being what their elders considered lazy, they were likewise busy creating yet another generation that is so large it dwarfs the baby boomers, millennials. Like above, I skipped over my tiny Zennial
generation. This is it. 1977, Year of the Snake to 1983.
Generation, because the next section will explore our fledgling generation in depth. Since most people making the statistics about millennials and Gen X just lump us in, we Zennials are included in both Gen X and millennial measurements.
Right. Exactly. Not quite boomer, but not quite millennial, or like a mixture of both. We're on the cusp. I like this. Cuspians on the generational. Zillennials. Generation Z, huh?
Millennials, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, make up 92 million Americans, while the boomers only boast 77 million, making them a truly massive generation. They were also the first group of people to be born into a fully digital world.
Shadow Buddha.
Millennials grew up with computers in their homes with internet available, playing many video games, and eventually got cell phones while still in school. Millennials are credited with creating memes and fueling social media's emergence and explosive growth. When the millennials were not busy on Discord and Facebook, they began making their contribution to the ongoing generations of Americans by making Generation Z.
Here we go.
Gen Z are today's children, so for the most part,
what's up, chat? Any questions? Any comments? Yeah, so the generation Y or millennials, 1981 to 1986. Some of the traits are the tech savvy, broke. However, they're entrepreneurial, definitely, and what they're contributing to the human consciousness evolution is social media and memes. Mental health becoming becoming more normal to talk about. It's definitely thanks due to the millennials. Some may think that people go overboard with it, but other folks know that it actually helps people sometimes, a lot of times. An example of a millennial Gen Y would be Rihanna, self-made billionaire. who's a style icon and rebel queen in her own right. And this is the classic millennial archetype. Tulpa is a Rihanna. Yeah, and then the Gen Zs that we're talking about right now, 1997 to 2012, and some of their traits and characteristics are they're digital natives. They grew up around having cell phones, and for example, a little anxious, and which maybe fuels their creativity, and definitely unpredictable, right? And what they're contributing to the evolution of human consciousness is they're breaking everything to a certain extent, breaking it down, and what happens is a lot of new ideas are coming about, new ideas about gender, work, and relationships. Example of a Gen Zer would be Billie Eilish, who's definitely a weirdo. Some people think she's beautiful and definitely emotional if you listen to some of her catalog, but she owns it, and she's got a Fortnite skin. Good evening. I think I'm Generation X. Yeah, if you're born from 1965 to 1982, you're Gen X. But we're gonna talk about there's a Zennial generation from 1978 to 1980 that you may be I don't know, 82 that you might be, 83 that you might be part of. I think you're 78, right? 1978, Max, something like that. Yeah, so salve to you, Max. So let's go back to this.
They haven't been around long enough to get a fancy name. But some call this newest generation the second silent generation, and based on the tumult that Gen X and millennials have had to live through, it makes sense, but time will tell. Before moving on to this video's final and I think best section, I need to make a few caveats. First, my assertions about who births each generation are generalities.
Yep.
Like all of this generation stuff, and the lines are not written in stone or DNA. Those born at the dawn of their generation tend to have more in common with their immediate predecessors.
There you go, Max. That's for you.
Than those
and all the other men of culture.
Of their generation tend to have more in common with their immediate predecessors than those born later within their own generation. But as I said in the beginning, at least the generalizations created by lumping us into generations make sense, because in general, that group of people experienced similar world events and changes. Look, overall, what I'm trying to say here is that none of this is hard and fast. It's like the lines on a map. They're there when you look at a map, and plenty of people firmly believe that those lines mean something, some so firmly they'll happily die to defend them. But in reality, from space, those lines do not exist. The borders are manufactured creations, and so are the concepts of generations. Now, with that out of the way, let's finally
crazy. Like, we like it though.
Excitedly move on to the last section of this video. Why are Zennials so special?
Those are people 1977 to 1983.
I expect some of you just skip directly to this section to see what makes me believe this crazy assertion, or
oh yeah, you remember too, like you could be have an affinity for a different generation. Right? This is all theory, right?
Even why I think there's a micro generation sandwiched between Gen X and the millennials. Or perhaps if I'm lucky, you too are a Zennial born between 1977 and 1980.
Yeah, that's me, 77.
And you want to see what I think makes us so unique. Either way, my statements will be the same. To begin with, the Zennial generation needs to exist precisely because of the unique point in time in which we were born. The world was
Billie
changing
Eilish.
fast, and we just happened to be at the perfect place to ride along and learn along the way. Lots of people are quick to dismiss that Zennials are even a thing, and if you're one of those, here is why I think you're wrong. Zennials were the first and only generation born to an analog world that grew up alongside the digital world we live in now. This unique experience lets us see the world from a particular perspective. It's almost like we have a second sight that allows us to see the realities hidden behind all the misinformation that's drowning the rest of the world. From being there when modems screeched and disks were floppy, holding just over a megabyte of data, all the way to having 5G smartphones in our pockets, we've gained a particular ability to interpret the world.
Right. We have perspective on both sides before and after the digital switch.
We, the Zennials, were there for the massive shift that happened in the world during our formative years. Most of us had computers in our homes before we went to kindergarten. We were the first.
No, not me. My brother did.
Generation
85.
To learn computer skills in school. We were the first to truly not need to know multiplication tables or cursive in adulthood.
Right. I'm glad I know those things, though.
We experienced travel and the country before 9/11 and the outlandish changes the ensuing Patriot Act wrought.
Right.
Zennials used payphones, home phones, pagers, and all the various mobile phones. Our generation is the only one that learned about being online from dial-up bulletin board systems and America Online to ludicrously fast fiber connections. We lived one of the most life-altering changes in how life is lived in the history of humankind.
Yeah, Patrick Bateman, this is the whole Life Path 9 right here. Right? Been there, done that.
Which shaped us into the Zennials we are now. Do you still need convincing? Consider this. We were the last generation that could easily hide from our parents and do what we wanted. We were the last generation.
Right, we're plugged in with the smartphone.
That was able to do the dumb stuff we did as teenagers and young adults without it being blasted on the internet.
Right.
We are the last generation not to have an internet search history that goes back to our infancy, while being the first to understand what that even means. Simply put, we have a clearer, more accurate view of the world and its technological nuances than the older generations who struggle with technology, while simultaneously maintaining a solid connection with the analog and natural world that younger generations struggle to sustain.
Learn from this chat and Ben.
Reminded of what Plato wrote. A nation should be led by its most curious, benevolent, just, kind, and altruistic individuals.
Hey, that's me.
Plato called these ultimate rulers philosopher kings, and according to him, anyone who could fit this role would have had to spend their entire lives preparing. Who alive has more completely spent their whole lives training to fill this role than the Zennials? We need to become the leaders and advisors of the world before it crumbles around us. In ancient Rome, the philosopher king was embodied by the most outstanding leader in human history, Marcus Aurelius, considered by many to be the most benevolent and considerate leader ever. Our special place in history as Zennials has given us the perfect conditions to become leaders and advisors who have empathy, look at reality, and do everything we can to ensure equality and altruism are indeed the rules we live by.
Absolutely. I like that. I like that.
Spectacular.
Yeah. Breaking news, right? U.S. warplanes strike 3 nuclear sites in Iran. With that going on, we're still going to do our thing, man. So with the generation that Ben is a part of and that we're currently in the middle of, and people still born right now, is Generation Alpha, which is 2013. There you go, Year of the Snake, to 2025. Year of the Snake. Oh, I see how they do this. Okay, we can use that with the corresponding with the lunar Chinese astrology. Cool. So the tablet is definitely a trait of the Generation Alpha. Ben 2018, right? And so they got the tablet in one hand and deep thoughts in the other hand. And some of the things that they're contributing currently to the consciousness evolution is really is to be announced, right? TBA. But Ben and you and your friends are probably going to end up the ones who are fixing the stuff that we're messing up, that's getting messed up right now. So prepare yourself and become a philosopher king. So an example of this is Ben, right? Ben is definitely Generation Alpha. That's what I call him, a mogger. Well, she already stands out as a leader, right? There he is on the left, right? Definitely, that's Generation Alpha right there. Alpha with the Sigma mindset at times. And the next generation from 2025 to 2040, 2039 is going to be Generation Beta, which is funny enough, Beta, huh? Beta male, right? And the traits are shit. Probably going to be AI. AI is probably going to be Generation Beta's co-pilot in their life. And is their contribution going to be merged with tech or a radical return to nature? We shall see, right? We shall see. Okay, Generation Beta. So what are your thoughts, chat? I'm going to put the link in if you want to build. I'll build on topic. Yeah. What do you think? What's really going on? What's the breaking news saying in this collective hallucination we call consensus reality?
To target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history.
A BB, huh?
In Operation Rising Lion,
Benjamin,
Israel has done truly amazing things. But in tonight's action against Iran's nuclear facilities, America has been truly unsurpassed.
Thanks, Markella.
It has done what no other country on earth could do.
It's done what no other country can do, which is there's ways to donate to super chat, super sticker, membership, and through Buy Me a Coffee link. We have memberships there where we can have one-on-ones. Tell me what's really going on, and we can see what we can do to help you out. So all donations are greatly appreciated. Okay. Okay, chat. 143, right? That's 143 mark. 1 hour 43 minutes.
Why don't you just take my blood?
Yeah. So let this guy talk. So what's how can each generation be added to the consciousness? So let's break it down. So simply put, The Transcendentals generation started the find your meaning movement, right? And then the Gilded generation built the empire. The progressive and social justice generation, or what's the word I like? I like progressive. Okay, the progressive generation added the social justice. This is an equation for human consciousness, right? And then the lost generation added emotional truth. And then the so-called greatest generation built the modern machine. But then the silent generation added some tweaks to it. It changed it quietly and refined it. And then the boomer generation brought a mass cultural explosion. Then the Generation Xers, along with the help of the social engineers of the millennials, did the DIY rebel spirit and added it to the consciousness. Do it yourself, rebel spirit, right? And then the millennials added emotional honesty, where emotional honesty and tech merged. Then the Generation Z remixed everything. Now the identity for many things, not just gender, is fluid. And then now, and in the coming days, the alpha and beta generations, they're going to deal with AI, climate change, whether you believe it in it or not, and identity on a whole new level. Each generation equals a step up in how we think, and love for that matter, and rebel and build. Right? So, what are we doing here, chat? Are we I'm happy that you're here, We're keeping it positive and pushing it and realistic. So here's a fun thought experiment. Which generation do you feel most like, regardless of your birth year? Some of y'all may have been born in the 90s. However, you may have pure lost generation vibes, and some of you all may have been Gen Zers, or really transcendental deep thinkers in disguise. Like me, I'm feeling that lost generation, 1883 to 1900. What even is life? I'm feeling that for sure. So drop that in your chat. Your generation, the generation that you secretly vibe with. Okay. There we go. I was born in the 60s, huh? Yeah. So you would be if you were born before 65, you would be the millennial, technically a Generation X, or before that would be the baby boomers. But like I said, you may secretly vibe with another generation. What generation that we've been building upon and decoding? Which one do you think you vibe with? And drop in the chat too. What's your favorite iconic figure from any of those groups? Okay. 68. So yeah, you're a Generation X, right? Generation X, like me, huh? That's why we have an uncommon commonality, huh? Right. This is probably why we have that do-it-yourself rebel spirit, huh, Markella? But yeah, everybody. Consciousness evolution definitely equals your journey. And it doesn't matter when you were born. What really matters is that you play your role in this evolution of human consciousness, Ben and friends. So learn from the rebels and study the builders, Ben. Steal the wisdom from the poets and pass it on. To the new crew, right? It's going to be better that way because they're coming after us, and you guys can donate when I'm not around. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and always stay curious and stay consciousness. Next live we'll probably break down like how this personal birth chart connects to your generational karma. And it's about to get deep. You won't want to miss it. And on Monday, my Monday, your Sunday, tomorrow, we might have to go into we're gonna go into the Machiavelli lit, right? Under the Machiavelli Act, not standing for BS, right? Make room for the new philosopher kings. NPC the game live. Love you, Benjamin. Stand up for yourself, right? Be good. Don't let them finesse you.